What would you do if you saw a stranger being humiliated in public? Most people would just stay quiet and look away, but this single dad didn't. He stood up, defended a woman at a coffee shop, not knowing that she was actually a billionaire who would soon change his life forever. Before we dive into this unbelievable story, make sure you like this video and subscribe to the channel because what happens next will leave you speechless. The coffee shop was bustling that morning, filled with the clinking of mugs, the hiss of steaming milk, and the low hum of conversations blending together in a melody of ordinary life. But for David, a 34-year-old single father, every morning carried the same quiet battle, juggling his job, his young daughter Lily's school routine, and the ever-present weight of being the only parent she had left. And as he stood in line waiting for his usual black coffee, he thought about the daycare bill he had to pay, the worn shoes Lily had outgrown, and the essay she had proudly written about her dad being her hero. A thought that warmed his heart, even as it reminded him of how hard he was trying to hold everything together. Yet little did he know that on this very morning, fate had prepared a twist that would rewrite his life in ways he could never imagine. Across the shop near the window where sunlight spilled onto polished wooden tables, a woman in her early 30s with sleek chestnut hair tied in a neat bun sat quietly dressed in a simple beige coat over a white blouse. Elegant yet understated, her eyes scanning a laptop screen with focused intensity. She looked like any other professional grabbing a quick coffee before work. But beneath that calm exterior was Catherine Hayes, a billionaire entrepreneur known in elite circles for her intelligence and power. Though here she sat unnoticed, wanting for once to blend into the world of normal people. And for a moment she allowed herself to breathe in the scent of roasted beans and enjoy the freedom of anonymity. Yet peace rarely lasts, and soon trouble brewed when a man at the counter, loud and arrogant, began making comments directed at her, his voice sharp enough to cut through the chatter of the cafe. "Hey, sweetheart, why don't you smile? You look too serious for a place like this," he sneered, leaning against the counter as if the world revolved around him. A few customers looked up briefly before returning to their phones, pretending not to notice, but Catherine's lips pressed together in discomfort as she tried to ignore him. However, the man was relentless, stepping closer to her table. "Come on, don't be rude. I'm just trying to have a conversation," he added with mock charm. And that was when David, who had been watching with growing unease, felt something inside him snap. He knew what it was like to feel small, to feel cornered, to wish someone, anyone, would step in. And without a second thought, he left his place in line and walked straight toward the woman. His voice steady yet commanding, "Hey, she's clearly not interested. Why don't you back off?" The cafe seemed to hold its breath as the man turned to glare at David, surprised that someone had dared to interfere. "And who are you?" "Her bodyguard." The stranger scoffed, but David didn't flinch, his tall frame standing protectively beside the woman. "I'm someone who knows when enough is enough. Now leave her alone." His tone carried the weight of a man who had faced hardships greater than petty intimidation. The kind that taught you to fight not with fists but with conviction. The bully muttered under his breath and finally stormed out, slamming the door behind him. And just like that, the cafe exhaled as if nothing had happened, people going back to their drinks and screams. But Catherine was left, speechless, her heart pounding, not from fear, but from astonishment at the stranger who had stood up for her when no one else would. "Thank you," she said softly, her voice carrying both relief and admiration. David simply nodded, offering a small smile. "No one deserves to be treated like that," he replied before turning to head back in line for his coffee. But Catherine, curious and drawn to the man who had just defended her, stopped him. "Wait, at least let me buy you your coffee," she insisted, standing up and closing her laptop. David hesitated, his instinct telling him not to accept charity. Yet her eyes held a sincerity that disarmed him. "All right, but only if you let me say thank you properly," she added, her lips curving into a smile that seemed both graceful and warm. And so they ordered together, sitting across from each other at the table by the window where sunlight played on the rim of their cups. "I'm Catherine," she introduced herself, leaving out her last name, her empire, her wealth. She wanted to be seen simply as a woman, not as a billionaire. And David responded with a gentle grin. "David. And that little girl over there with the pigtails and chocolate milk mustaches, Lily, my daughter." He gestured to the corner where a bright-eyed 6-year-old sat coloring in her sketchbook, swinging her legs happily, and Catherine's heart softened instantly, the innocence of the child melting any formality in the air. "She's beautiful," Catherine whispered, her eyes lingering on Lily with a tenderness she didn't expect to feel. "She's my world," David said, his voice carrying quiet pride and a hint of exhaustion. And in that moment, Catherine saw not just a man, but a father who had given up everything for his child. His worn jacket, the calloused hands, the faint shadows under his eyes. Signs of sacrifice wrapped in strength. And though she had built empires and closed billion-dollar deals, she realized she was sitting across from someone richer in spirit than anyone she had ever met. Their conversation flowed naturally, laughter spilling between them like they were old friends catching up. David telling stories about Lily's wild imagination and Catherine sharing light-hearted memories of her childhood, carefully choosing which truths to reveal and which secrets to guard. Yet beneath her calm demeanor she was studying him, wondering how a man who had so little could carry himself with such dignity. And the more she watched him, the more she felt a stirring inside, something beyond gratitude, something she hadn't allowed herself to feel in a long time. And as their cups emptied and Lily tugged at David's sleeve to show him her drawing, Catherine's decision was made. She wanted to see this man again, not as a rescuer in a coffee shop, but as someone who might just hold the key to a part of her life she had long ignored, the part that craved real connection. She smiled, reaching for her phone. "David, I'd like to stay in touch. Maybe meet again sometime if you'd like that." Her words hung in the air like an unspoken promise. And though David was taken aback, a spark of hope flickered in his eyes, a feeling he hadn't allowed himself since the day his world had been torn apart by loss. "I'd like that," he replied simply, his voice low but steady. And neither of them knew then that this simple moment, born from courage in a coffee shop, was only the beginning of a story that would test their hearts, bridge two different worlds, and reveal truths that could change everything. But for now, as the morning light bathed the cafe in gentle warmth, it was enough that two strangers had found each other in the most unexpected way, unaware that destiny had just quietly taken its seat at their table, waiting for the next chapter to unfold. Days turned into weeks, and Catherine kept meeting David and little Lily, her heart softening with every shared laugh and quiet conversation. Yet a secret weighed heavily. He still didn't know who she truly was. One evening after walking with them through the park, Catherine finally confessed, her voice trembling, "David, I'm not just Catherine. I own Hayes Enterprises." Silence fell, David's world spinning, but Lily's tiny hand slipped into Catherine's, breaking the tension. David looked into her eyes, torn yet hopeful. Maybe love wasn't about wealth, but about finding someone who truly cared.